I'm going to have a look at a riff that I call the Hammer On Riff from part of a song called Am I Evil, originally written by Diamondhead, covered a little bit later on by Metallica, later on, back in the 1980s, so it's quite an old piece. I'll have a play through and talk about it afterwards and break it down afterwards, and I'll just put a little bit of the stuff that comes before and after it so that you can see it in context just as I play through it. Then I get into the riff that I'm talking about. And then into the song. So, the reason I'm having a look at this today, there's two reasons I'm having a look at this today, is one of my students, I'll call him Inspector Columbo, he'll know who he is. He loves playing, at the minute, he's enjoying playing single string riffs, so things that just involve one string, he's just getting back into it and he's enjoying playing some single string riffs. So the riff I've just been playing, the Hammer On Riff, is one of those. The second reason is, as I've thought about doing this, when I was learning to play, I've not been playing that long. I was into playing the Metallica songs and learning Metallica songs, although this is a cover version that they did. I was trying to learn it, and I got up to the point where I'd done the chugging bit at the start. That bit I was okay with. Then I did the little ascending sort of run. I was okay with that, and then we came to the Hammer On Riff, and bear in mind back in the day there's no internet, no tab, I was listening to it on a record and it just seemed so fast and so flashy, and I'm thinking, how the heck am I ever going to be able to play something like that? It just sounded totally, completely out of my league. However, just because it sounds complicated and it sounds shreddy and technical doesn't necessarily mean that it is so. Once I'd actually learned, I was lucky enough someone else showed me what to do back in the day. It actually was quite a bit simpler than what I originally thought it was. So I call it the Hammer On Riff because it's all played basically using hammer-ons. So the part in question is that part. There's a lot of notes going on there, I'm not going to lie to you. Obviously it's quite fast as the tempo's high, there's a lot of notes. But if you watch my picking hand, I'm not actually picking that much. I've done another video on hammer-ons. If you've no idea with hammer-ons, probably this isn't a good place to start. But if you're okay with the concept of what hammer-on is, so basically hammer-on, I'm going to pick one note and then play another note without having to pick again. In this instance, everything's played on the B string of the guitar, so the second string. So for each of those little patterns, I'm going to start off just by picking my open B string. That's always going to be my first note on my pick note. And from there, I'm going to play little patterns of 3. So triplets, if you want to think of it in your head, if you're counting, you could use a word such as happily, 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 to get that triplet feel. And start off slowly, as ever, and build it up. From the pick note, that I'm going to obviously pick my plectrum on my B string. The next note I'm going to play is the 5th fret on the B string, but I'm not going to pick it. I'm just going to use my finger and literally hammer on. I'm going to put my finger onto the 5th fret without picking it again. So that's the second note on the 5th fret. The third note of the pattern is going to be up on the 8th fret. Now, I was using my little finger to play that note. You can use your third finger if you want to, if it's more comfortable, but the overall pattern is open string, 5th fret, 8th fret, and I'm only going to pick the open string. So I'm pick the open string, I'm going to hammer on the 5th fret with my first finger, and then use another finger of choice, my third or my fourth finger, to hammer on to the 8th fret. So and that pattern is repeated over and over again. So before you start, it moves around a little bit before we get to that. Have a go at just playing that. You can do it on I've got a heavy distorted sound on here. You can do it on a clean sound. It really works better on electric guitar. The notes do get a little bit lost if you try and play on an acoustic guitar unless you've got very strong fingers. So it really is something for the electric guitar, I would suggest. So just start off nice and slow. You're going to pick your B string, hammer onto your 5th fret, and then again hammer on to your 8th fret. That's with my 4th finger. I'll do it with my 3rd finger. Whichever one you're more comfortable with. So just get used to doing that in a pattern of 3. Watch my picking hand. You can see that I'm actually not picking very much. I'm only picking every one out of the 3 notes, the first of the 3 notes. So once we're comfortable with that, the idea of picking, then hammer. So pick, hammer, hammer, pick, hammer, hammer. It's just a case of moving our fretting hand into different positions to generate the rest of the riff. There's 2 other positions. The next position is just move the entire thing 1 fret down. So instead of using my 5th and my 8th fret, I'm going to use my 4th and my 7th fret. It's a little bit, that bit's a little bit like the AC/DC riff that I did a few videos ago. So apart from the first position where I'm using my 5th and my 8th frets, just going to move the whole thing down and start with the open B again, but instead of using 5 and 8, I'm going to use 4 and 7. That's the second position, and the final part, there's only three positions to it, is going to be the open B string again, and then I'm going to use my 7th and my 10th fret. Sounds a bit strange when you slow it down like this and play them individually. That's one of the keys to the riff, is the fact that it's speeded it up and it sounds quite flashy, but it's not as fast as what you think because there's not as much picking as what you think. So we're going to put those together in sequence as the song goes, and we can see how it sort of comes together. So all I'm doing is moving between the different positions using that same pattern. Then I followed it up with a couple of harmonics, then we're straight into the song. So hopefully you can see that by learning a simple pattern and just taking a little bit of time to build it up, use your metronome, use your foot tapping to get the speed up, and eventually it's not that difficult to get to the kind of speed that I was playing it at in the song speed. Because if you look at the riff, all my picking is it's actually not that fast. It's a bit of an illusion, a bit of a trick, but once you start getting it a little bit faster, even if you don't manage to straight away get it up to the speed of the original, it sounds pretty cool and it's a fun thing to play. So it satisfies those 2 things. Inspector Columbo has got another riff to go with that's just a 1-string riff, and also hopefully it's an example for anyone that's learning who finds something like that it sounds intimidating. Sometimes you'll find that just because it sounds intimidating or sounds complicated, it isn't necessarily that way. It's just a clever pattern that's been used and it just happens to sound that way. Again, I was playing it with distortion. You can play it on a clean sound, but it really does sound a little bit better on distortion. Enjoy.